Archives of Prasar Bharati presents the timeless treasure of golden era.
The world seems a relatively safe and secure place until calamity strikes. Imagine being caught in a natural disaster like floods or earthquake, or being involved in an accident or a plane crash, or being a victim of terrorist violence, or being involved in some man-made disaster. In today's episode of Mind Watch, we'll talk about people who have gone through such experiences, have come out alive but not without scars on their psyche. What happens to them, how their personalities are shaped, and how they cope.
Disasters are not new to mankind. Humanity has long been witnessing earthquakes and floods. In recent times, however, rapid industrialization has made us more prone to be victims of traumatic events. These could be industrial accidents, explosions or fires. The impact is on the environment, economy, and damage to the entire flora and fauna. Restless earth literally shakes us while fire burns away the dreams for the future, leaving the victims anguished for a long time.
Traumatic situations could be either natural or they could be even man-made. Natural conditions such as earthquakes, floods, these are the conditions which produce quite a distress, and even they are catastrophic at times, and because of that there are many psychological manifestations. There are many man-made situations which cause trauma to the person and thus impinging upon the mental health of the person.
Post-traumatic stress disorder occurs after an event which is outside the range of usual human experiences. It is one psychological disorder which can occur almost exclusively as a result of stress. The event is catastrophic, be it a serious accident, or a fire, or a terrorist violence, or a war.
Intense and acute stress can play havoc with our bodies and our minds, and even normal, stable people can have a breakdown. Normally, the symptoms last for a short period of time, but sometimes the victims may display a wide range of symptoms even for a prolonged period of time.
Immediately, the reaction is that of numbness and being dazed. The individual behaves as if he is not in a position to comprehend anything. Later on, there are painful and recurrent reminiscences as if there are flashes which occur during the waking stage and occur during sleep.
Post-traumatic stress disorders are very common after any calamities, whether it's natural calamities like earthquake or man-made calamities like riots, which Bombay has observed 1.5 to 2 years back. And after that, we were getting many adult patients coming with either panic attacks or paranoid delusions. In dreams, they used to hear the noise of people shouting or police firing. And it was very difficult to convince them that nothing will happen, you go back.
Along with this, there is anxiety, there is palpitation, there is irritability, there is anger, and this can occur even for a very, very long time after the event. There is very clear evidence of anger in this individual, anger as if raising a fist against the skies. There is a lot of guilt for not having been able to do something at the time of the event, or guilt for just having survived.
In the initial stages, it is seen when the person is quite disturbed, he may find difficulty in sleeping. There is a subjective anxiety, restlessness, nervousness, and feeling of sadness which may amount to depression.
People who were involved in militant violence were the victims and the survivors, and till today, years after the events had happened, they are still showing signs and symptoms. children are the worst to suffer because they do not have any coping mechanisms at all. Old people are also very badly off to suffer because their coping mechanisms are very rigid.
A wide range of emotional and other responses may be displayed. The person may have fear reactions, difficulty in sleeping in the night, lack of concentration, numbness, depression, not being able to interact with others, and what is called as flashback phenomena, where the entire crisis was relived. This is called as post-traumatic stress disorder.
I am not disclosing my identity because I have to go back to the place from where all this started, and I have to face the same very people. Actually, it started around 4 years back when there was a lot of commotion in a particular state, and me and my family had to flee. And later, whenever I would hear loud voices, I would start having this apprehension, and I would really get scared, and I would break into sweats.
They indeed show most of the sign of post-traumatic stress disorder, like flashbacks, like recurring nightmares, and they also show certain inability to trust people, to have confidence.
I would feel depressed and low, and I would literally relive the whole experience, and this created a lot of problems for me for at least 6 to 8 months. I could not sleep well.
One of the very important developments in the last 40 years is the recognition that experiencing a disaster, either a change in the environment or in the social environment or the physical environment, does produce significant changes in all individuals, irrespective of their background, education, sex and other aspects. These changes are affecting almost all the people in the initial stages, and as time passes on, most people cope with it, but most studies show that about 20 to 30% continue to have a continuous mental health need of various types.
The kind of impact a post-traumatic event has depends on the kind of the traumatic event, how sudden it was, special reference it has to a particular person, and whether the person was able to deal with that situation immediately or not. It also depends on the person's personality makeup as well as social support systems. In certain situations like natural disasters or accidents, the person may have no time at all, and the impact may be very, very severe to cope with the crisis.
The crisis may start as a bolt from the blue for the individual caught in the accident, as well as for the near and dear ones. From the dreams of reaching a destination, there is a detour through pain and agony. The suddenness of the event gives no time to react to the crisis. Loss of life or grievous injury takes a heavy toll on the entire family.
Here is a lady experiencing intense grief due to the sudden demise of her young son in an accident.
मेरे लड़के की डेथ हुई थी ना, तो वो अचानक
When my son passed away recently, it was extremely unbearable. I longed to see him, hear his voice, call out to me. His manner of talking was so special. Recently, when winter set in and I had to take the woolens out, the very sight of his sweater was so painful to me that I had to put them away. The moment I see his clothes, I feel that he is right there, in front of me, which is so difficult to bear. I still feel his presence everywhere, all the time.
आता नजर आ रहा है, ऐसे ही लग रहा है कि जैसे वो गाड़ी जैसे खड़ी, उसके एक्शन है मेरे सामने दिखते हैं मेरे को.
Emotional trauma may be experienced on a mass scale in entire populations when a major industrial disaster takes place. Danger lurks beneath the deceptive quietness and efficiency of high-tech sophisticated industrial setups. These may be potential death traps to the communities living around, leaving people alone and isolated where humanity once thrived.
We were asleep at night and in the morning came to know about the gas leak. We saw people fleeing away. We were also told to go away to safety.
There seems to have been some kind of a reaction in the tank, but as a result, the pressure and temperature in the tank went much higher than the normal limits. There is a safety device on the tank to keep it from damage in case of overpressure. So this relieved the excess pressure. The gases went to a scrubber which is designed to render this material harmless by scrubbing it with caustic. But the flow was apparently more than what it could cope with, and some undetoxified material was released to the atmosphere.
Around midnight, we felt a burning sensation in the eyes and started panicking. There was chaos all around. We were sent back to our homes, saying that everything was under control, but we continued to have severe burning in the eyes, chest and stomach, which lasted for at least 4 to 6 days.
In the Bhopal, still we are seeing there are so many people who are still having the nightmares. They got up suddenly and feared that this gas tragedy can occur again, and we are still feeling some choking sensation, and these sort of nightmares still they are having, and this is again leading to a very depressive type of the illness, and they are not able to work properly, they are not able to concentrate on their work, and they are not still relaxed. Growth of the children has not occurred properly because of this gas tragedy, and they have not got a proper diet, even some mental retardation thing we had seen.
And we examined the problem and found that there are so many thousands who required help, and there were no psychiatrists in the city of Bhopal. So we launched into a training program for the medical officers, wrote a simple manual so that this work can be done by the medical officers.
A serious and complex kind of post-traumatic syndrome is the one where a person after a head injury shows certain typical symptoms, and this is called as post-concussion syndrome.
During my visit to India on a business trip in December 92, I had a dizzy spell and fell down from the second level on a concrete slab, and that changed my life beyond anybody's imagination nor my own imagination. The first problem that I developed was severe headache and followed by dizziness, very high anxiety levels, and even for a very small things I used to have temper outbursts, or in medical language they call it temper tantrums. And added to that, I had very severe depression, weakness, fatigueness.
Many times the individual forget about what he has done in the past. His memory lapses are quite common, and also he sometimes forgets the names, even the most popular things that he has done in the past. Sometimes a noise bothers him. Sometimes simple incident makes him extremely angry and hostile.
I had problems just about in everything, and my cognitive difficulties were beyond belief. For a person who was so active and so hardworking, I became a dumbhead. I could not even read properly. I could not, for example, write. I could not even understand. My comprehension and my ability to grasp things, my abstraction problems. And as you can see, I am wearing the earphones because I cannot take noise, sudden noises, continuous noises, you name it. I get upset for everything.
See, head injury causes different types of problems for the person, his family, and the society. Now, one of the problems the patient has to face is because of the different degrees of brain dysfunction, then the different degrees of impairment in the cognitive functions of the patient. Now, if the patient has to get back to his normal states of functioning, there has to be a way to restore some of these functions. See, in cognitive retraining, we help the patient to improve his attentional capacities, perceptual discrimination, memory functions, conceptual thinking, and even problem solving abilities. It takes time for this type of retraining method to result or to show adequate type of result in the patient. The patient has to go through rigorous training program over a period of a month, sometime many months, so that he can attain a better level of cognitive proficiency.
The behavior of the individual may have changed due to this traumatic brain injury. And so this causes the family to go through a certain psychological development or change, and to be more understanding and supportive. And where there is family support, it certainly helps in the rehabilitation of the person with traumatic brain injury.
Many a time we find that even minimal improvement in the cognitive status brings in about a better cognitive confidence in the patient, and the patient shows tremendous amount of overall improvement. And this overall improvement in turn helps the patient to concentrate on very specific recovery of certain functions that have been very acutely affected in the patient.
Nature is a benefactor par excellence, but also a potential enemy. And when the balance of nature is disturbed, it hits back to restore the balance. Floods may leave millions homeless. Our restless earth may throw the life of inhabitants on its surface out of gear. The events make everyone anguished and shattered, leaving scars in the minds of victims and psychological traumas unimaginable for a long time to come. It suddenly fell down and there was a loud bang. We were all sleeping there. My child was here. One of my daughters-in-law and her child were buried in the rubble. With the help of the other, we pulled out their bodies. We asked people to run away to safety. 2 of us were sleeping here and the others were inside. Then we heard noises sounding like a machine gun. There was dust all around and we couldn't see anything. We were terrified. We were stuck and we started screaming. Nobody was ready to help. I was caught in the rubble and I shouted for help.
The earthquake which rocked Maharashtra in 1993 left thousands dead. It left many more injured, and it left many more emotionally shattered, distorting the social fabric. Every disaster leaves a trail of morbidity with the victims, especially the vulnerable sections of the society like children and women.
Prompt psychological help just after the disaster can help reduce long-term psychological complications. This can be done by anybody. This can be done by the family, a physician, or a mental health professional. It can also be done by a support group where solace and reassurance are offered.
It is important that the service is being provided at the doorstep. And such a program can be formulated only depending upon the existing social circumstances and with the active involvement of the victims and volunteers drawn from the same villages.
After having removed the victims to a safe distance, his physical needs need to be looked after right away. Very severe violence or excitement or restlessness might need some medications, but most of the times what is required is a detailed and a frank talking to the survivors.
Not only the doctors have to provide this care, everyone who come into contact with a disaster affected population should be able to provide this care.
The community plays a very vital role. The families, the state, the nations as a whole dedicate their resources to help that family who is in need of services. Let's say, for example, physical health, dental care, mental health care, financial health. All these things are mobilized instantaneously. As a matter of fact, there is an agency called the Agency for Rapid Deployment of Resources in Times of Crisis. We need to have this also in India.
So what is required is for each one of them to recognize this as an important event. Secondly, provide the type of a help that is possible within them. It might be passive listening, it might be developing new lifestyles in a group, or providing physical help, or providing psychological support, or even drugs for alleviating symptoms of anxiety, depression and other things. So, the recognition at all levels that help is required, help can be provided, and help is best provided by people who are living with the disaster population is the most important lesson that we have.
See what happens finally, someday the relief workers and the rehabilitation agencies will leave that place. So that will leave the victims to themselves, and they'll have to start repairing their own lost lives and the fabric as such. So the only help which the relief agencies or the rehabilitation agencies can do is facilitate that process of coming back to the natural style. That's what was existing before the disaster.
But what impresses me most, that giving them the positive experience and certain amount of support, how quickly they recover, they heal and become normal.
Some self-help groups are very useful. Even if these self-help groups are political or actional in nature, they provide a forum for these individuals, the survivors and the victims, to voice their common feelings and experiences. Psychotropic medication has a lot of role in these patients, particularly in the acute phase of the disorder. These patients are very restless, sometimes they are suspicious, sometimes they are paranoid, and sometimes they are depressed, and they need appropriate drugs. But the caution is that the drugs should not be continued indefinitely, because depending upon their premorbid personalities, their earlier adjustments, their earlier frustrations, there is a tendency for some of these individuals to get dependent and keep on taking the drugs indefinitely, either prescription or otherwise.
The recovery path is slow and tortuous for a victim of post-traumatic stress disorder. We need to help each other because of the turbulent times that we live in.
One of the very important questions that we have to address when we are dealing with the people affected by the disaster is, what is the best way to help? I think there has been a shift in the last 10 years from looking at help provided from charity to as a right. My own suggestion is that we must think of providing help, whatever level we want to give, as a right and uniformly to all the people, and make this very clear to the population so that there is no middlemen, there is no procedures that come in the way.
You may not be able to prevent all accidents from happening or foresee all catastrophes, but definitely you can build your own coping strategies to tide over the crisis and help yourself and others around you. Feel empowered to act, help the co-victims in distress, and surely life can get going again.
Silent in your tears, wasted in your years. When you cry alone. Recourse to fantasy, living with insanity. Another night beside the phone. Watch your mind feel the pain. Seek your meaning by mind watch. Gauge the war within. Addictions in the bin. Curl up with your memories. Togetherness and harmony. Watch your mind